Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the AWA webinar this afternoon, where we'll be exploring some activities and a particular project that SUEZ is doing in Barcelona in Spain, a very relevant project to many Australian cities and towns that's looking at the installation of smart meters. Now, I understand Barcelona has a population of some 1.7, 1.8 million. It's gone up. We have just been advised it's got 3 million, which makes the proposition of what SUEZ is doing now much more acceptable. That I understand SUEZ are looking at deploying about 1.5 smart meters across this very important city in Spain. And to talk about this project this afternoon, we have Mateu Crespi, who's joining us from France, who's with us, who's arrived only last night in Australia, so it's fantastic to see him still standing. But the topic this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, is so relevant to Australia as we ourselves look at ways of really using technology in a way that ensures people understand their own water consumption rates, actually gets a better understanding of the value of water itself and how we as a community can get behind what needs to be utilised in terms of technology to reduce our water consumption, particularly in times of water scarcity that we're seeing today. I'd really like to thank SUEZ for participating in this. SUEZ is one of our principal members of the association, and we're really grateful that Mateu was able to be with us this afternoon. So I'm Jonathan McEwen, the Chief Executive of the Association, and I have pleasure passing over to Sean, who will be giving a few introductory remarks from the SUEZ perspective before we get Mateu. Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, John. Hi, everybody. I'm Sean. I'm the Senior Manager for Smart Metering for SUEZ in Australia and New Zealand. And we are very lucky to have Mateu here for the next couple of weeks. He'll be presenting over the next few days and running workshops. And at the end of this presentation, if anybody is interested in sitting down with Mateu and having a one-on-one or spending some time talking about particular projects that they'd like to run, then absolutely get in touch. We'll have details shared after the presentation. Just before we do get stuck in, just to get an idea of who we've got, we're having more and more people join online, which is great to see. We're going to put a couple of poll questions on. So first of all, we'd like to know who has experience working in smart metering projects. Please let us know. That's an interesting break. I should actually start taking bets on these things. Oh, we've got the no's coming up to 63%. The yeses are coming up a little far behind 36. Oh, they're chasing down 35, 36, 35, 64, 65. Oh, the no's have it, 65 to 35. Ah, oh, that's incredible, incredible odds. And then let's move on to the next question if we can. The polls are closed, that's right. And if you are looking to launch smart metering projects in the near future, what size are they? And what are some of the challenges that you're facing? If you could type those in the box. And while you're answering those, I'll just make a couple of comments about the work that Mateu has been doing for the last few years or decades and the work that we've been doing in Australia. So Mateu is actually the Smart Metering Director for SUEZ globally. He's been intimately involved in building our smart metering capability for more years than I have been in the business. He's made a tremendous effort taking us basically from zero to one of the largest smart metering fleet operators in the world, millions of devices under contract, thousands of, I think the current number is 10,000 devices activated every day by SUEZ somewhere in the world, which is extraordinary. About half of those are by Mateu himself, just by hand. Breaks out the tools and bolts things on. He was actually very upset to see that we use 20 millimeters in Australia. We are apparently that's more criminal than driving on the wrong side of the road. So we can see just under half, which is great to see. Folks online are looking at deploying smart metering projects. So that's great to see. And the folks that are answering a no, I'd really love to hear from you guys online. what are the things that are stopping you? What are the challenges that you're seeing that are stopping these projects from happening? Okay, let's jump ahead to the next question. Okay, very quick one. Are you familiar with the WISE Alliance? Yes or no? 10 seconds to answer. 9, 8, 7, 7, 7, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, thank you. Well, you'll be learning more about the WISE Alliance through the presentation. And final question. And this one I think is going to be key to some of the topics that Mateu talks about today. Just let us know while I hand over what IoT technologies you've looked at, are interested in, and are most likely to consider. So with that all said, while you're answering those, please welcome Mateu. Thank you very much for your time, and look forward to your questions.
Okay. Thank you, John. Thank you for the warm welcome from you all in Australia. It's been a pleasure. And also thank you to AWA for the time to share the experience today. So let's move ahead. Okay. So basically, the takeaway for today, what I'm gonna brief a bit or present, is what happens in, what do you learn along such a project where you're talking about hundreds of thousands or even 1 million mirrors, like it's the case of Barcelona. We'll get in a bit in detail on the Barcelona project. However, first, I would like to go over a bit from the vision to the launch of such a project, how it all went. I have problem moving the slide. Okay. First of all, just quick introduction about SUEZ. SUEZ, it's 100,000 employees and really a strong footprint in war. So let's say that we are big in war too. I won't get much in details. Inside of the war business, networks, customers, from 2009 we created a company fully devoted to products, and especially in non-regulated products, and especially on smart metering. 2009 it was created, and as today we have around more than 250 persons fully devoted to deploy, develop, and operate and maintain smart metering systems, with more than 600 contracts with different municipalities and around 4 million operating water meters today and growing. If you look a bit at the history, we will see that we started in 2005, little, until 2010 we got steady growth that we have been trying to keep ahead until now. And first, we expect to keep on growing until 2042, which is the last contract, when it ends the last contract for deploying. Also, what we've done in water, it's being done also in gas through other companies devoted for the gas distribution networks. Okay, so first thing, when we launched first projects, when we start thinking, SUEZ is not a technology provider. We were not defining technology solutions from the technology point of view. We started from our knowledge on the water business sector. So what we got is business needs, and we looked at it from a financial point of view. And the right formula we used for that was analyzing the TCO, the total cost of ownership, which is just a simple formula. It's the CapEx, the investment you make, divided by the lifespan, and the OpEx, the operating cost. Basically, this slide, what tells us is the big investment, the big money is in meters and transmitters, because these are devices and services all over the geography, and that's where the big money goes. So one point of interest when analyzing the TCO, we'll see is how we make sure that this investment pays off, and it's the best case. Okay, so next step we did is to decouple the TCO in 3 parts. So first thing, when we analyze how to reduce the investment on, and we saw the highest investment is in meter and transmitter. What we want is to make tenders, to make competitive purchases. What we need to ensure is that we have multiple suppliers and we don't have any lock-in factor there that will make us produce stranded assets. Another thing we took a lot of care is to make sure that all suppliers will provide fully interoperable devices, meaning that we, in the same street, we can deploy several years one brand of meter, and next year just a different brand without having to adapt anything in the rest of the value chain. Network will be the same, the IT will be the same, and basically both brands, or 5 brands, which is what we have now, will work on the same way, the same tools, the same people, the same training, knowledge transfer, everything the same. And of course, at the end, what we decided also is that not only interoperable, but also based in open solutions. And that's our choice. We took the wireless bus, which is a standard for smart metering in Europe, quite recognized, I would say. And we make sure that what we ask as technology is based on this standard. So from this way, what we have is open solution, several suppliers, completely interoperable. Next step we were looking at is lifespan. We want assets that have the longest lifespan. So we divide the investment, producing the lowest TCO. First point of interest is battery life. So right now we're looking at 15 to 20 years lifespan. Of course, but there's always a balance between volume and frequency of information and transmission. But let's say that we have ways to make sure that transmitters, which is the electronic part of the mirror, can last from 15 to 20 years. Another point, key to ensure the TCO, was sustainability. By sustainability, what we want is to make sure that that solution will still be valid during all the life of the asset. If we think of a big project, like saying we will deploy fully in 5 or 10 years, let's say 10 years deployment for a 1 million meter contract. The last mirror it will be deployed, installed in the year 10. If we add 15 years of life, this means that when you make the decision, you are thinking of a solution that will be there 25 years later on, to make sure that the life of the last transmitter is not impacted. That's quite a heavy decision, to make a decision today that will, for a technology that will be valid for 25 years. So you need a solution that you really get a commitment from somebody, or you do it yourself, that whatever you install in the field, in 24 years, it's going to be still there running with the given quality. Of course, in 20 or 25 years, you want to innovate. You cannot get stuck with a solution exactly as it was the first year. So basically what you want to is capabilities to upgrade and to make sure that whatever you install in the field will be valid, but some years after, if there's some upgrade, some new version, you can populate that, you can install it in the field without affecting all the assets that were already in place. And if possible, upgrade the assets that were already installed. So basically it's making sure that the lifespan is not affected, that it will last battery, that it will be there for a long time, and that you can upgrade and you allow improvements, enhancements to come along the life. And the third adds to improve the TCO. It comes from one very important decision, which is facing the challenge of water mirror. Water mirror is not outdoors always. It's in pits, in basements, in subterranean. It can get flooded. So you have always challenges external to the pure technology. We found that, and this is physics who say it, that the lower the frequency you transmit, the better penetration. So when you look at the wireless M-bus standard, you will have several chances, several frequencies allowed, 868 megahertz, 433 megahertz, but you also have the 169 megahertz. And from our test, and it's not us who say it, it's third parties, physics, pure physics, they will say, if you choose 169 megahertz, you will get deeper penetration, you will get access to mirrors that with higher frequencies you want. It's not saying that it will solve all cases, it says that you will have a stronger, technically speaking, solution against walls, metal lids, subterranean pits, and hard to reach conditions. Another point that we think is important is when you are installing massively thousands or hundreds of thousands elements of electronics that must survive on battery, the last thing you want is to have a surprise. So the only way, or the most important way I would say, to convince the director, smart metering director, that that investment will persist, will be there for its long lifetime, is to make sure that it has references. That whatever you put in the field is not a prototype, is not something new, it's something fully tested and proven. So I would say references were an important asset when making the decision. And the last thing, of course, on the operating cost, if there's a cost that you can avoid or try to reduce, is to go to the field. So for that, what you basically need is a set of tools to remotely manage as much as possible the assets in the field. And if possible, automatically. Because when we're talking about hundreds of thousands, it's not an option to do it on a one by one. So how it was solved, this dilemma? So some years ago, the WISE Alliance was created. It was created or promoted by a number of actors from the IT to the hardware and meter manufacturers. Around 30 companies joined efforts to produce something that was open. So anybody, any company can become a member and get access to all the information. And from the information of the protocol, develop any solution for smart metering or for other sensors. It's based on European standards, wireless and bus, as I said. So taking something completely open, we build up the business protocol, the business solution on top, for water and for gas as the main users. And as for today, we're already reaching the more than almost 7 million meters if we add gas meters to the water meters. And as I said, last contracts take us to 2042. So in 2042, we will be still maintaining, operating this kind of technology. Okay. So in terms of technology, very quickly, my experience says that the best way to say what wise in 3 words, rather than defining everything that it's a bit messy for non-technical assistance. I would say what is not. It's not a high bandwidth. It means you cannot send a lot of data. You cannot send readings every second or every minute. It's too much information for the channel. It's low latency. It's not something that you can use to say, right now, I want to know what's the index, the consumption, and be pulling meters at your will. Why? Because it's something that has been defined to make sure of the 15, 20 years lifetime. If you either want a lot of information or low latency, at the end you're impacting in functionalities, and it might kill the battery too early. Okay. As I said, strong point, 20-year battery. Of course, 20 years or more than 20 years, as a matter of fact, it's for 1 index per day that can be sent twice. So you have redundancy. So if 1 frame gets lost, you get the second. But what's important is that during 20 years, you should not have any problem from the transmitter. So you have the lifetime of the meter pretty aligned with the lifetime of the transmitter. And you can think of the Decouple as a unique asset that it's dealt in a unique way with a 1 integrated life cycle. Of course, we don't have, I mean, if we started in 2005, first units, we don't have 20-year, any transmitter 20 years old. What we could do is what we call forensics, battery autopsy. So with help from the manufacturers, we took several transmitters, we opened them, and we check how much battery they had from a third party. And so far, all the analysis we found is that we still quite well. I mean, for example, these transmitters had a lifetime expected for 15 years, and we are quite above from that. So until we have the first 20-year transmitter that will allow us to certify what we wanted, so far the autopsy, the forensics we've done are validating our assumptions. Second point, once we see the transmitter, second point to analyze is concentrator. I mean, we want the small number of concentrators as possible. It's an asset that it's difficult to find a location. So with a small number of locations available, you want to cover as much as possible. So this is a picture from Paris, from La Défense. There we put a concentrator with a small antenna. Here is visible the antenna, very quite small. And what's important is that with 1 receiver receiving transmitters from 2-3 kilometers, we are receiving on this concentrator more than frames from 50,000 meters. So first, we don't have a problem of saturation. And second, we have quite a long range as we wanted, proving, as a matter of fact, that the VHF, the low frequency, it was a good choice to provide the biggest range. And also access to basement or meters that were in hard to reach locations. A bit more on physics. This is a third-party analysis. Basically, we checked the radio link when between the meter, the transmitter, and the concentrator, there's ground. And what we found is that already going down from 868 megahertz to 169 megahertz, we're talking about 20, 30 dBs, which is a lot. Wherever the 868 won't reach, you will have a chance with 169. Never mind if you are below the ground, because you will be able to cross the ground. Of course, as I said, this is not a guarantee that it will reach everywhere, but it will get much, much farther than higher frequencies. Some pictures about the concentrator. I mean, the concentrator, it's not something spectacularly big. It's not something complicated. It's something that fits in a small box that can be installed, I would say, outside or inside for better management in harsh conditions. Imagine some installation or some maintenance in a rainy day. So usually we try to put them inside, but it can be done outside. And basically what it's mandatory outside is to put the antenna. And the antenna, usually we use a mast to have better vision of the surroundings, to increase the range. And usually what happens is that people see the mast but don't see the antenna, because the antenna is quite small as a matter of fact. But what's important, what I would say, the key takeaway of that is that it's not rocket science. It's not something complicated. It's something quite easy to manage. And you don't need, as a matter of fact, very skilled engineers for that. And from the transmitter side, as I said, this is just some pictures showing samples, what we've done with the different mirror manufacturers. What's important to say is that, as I said, SUEZ is not a technology manufacturer. We don't fabricate, we don't manufacture any of this. Transmitters from Itron are manufactured by Itron. Transmitters from DIL are manufactured by DIL. So we basically push the specifications, the WISE protocol. They take it, they develop, and they manufacture. This is an important point because this allows you to make purchase orders of meter and transmitter already clipped and consider that the couple is an asset. So you have the guarantee that pulse counting is correct, that the clipping and the fitting is optimized. And what's more important, as all of them are based on the same protocol, they are fully interoperable. So you can start deployment with Itron and next year change to DIL because they made a better offer in the tender or for whatever reason, or better meteorological offer in the meter side, or Census or Honeywell Ulster, which was part of what we wanted previously to ensure interoperability and to allow competitive purchases. And then the final point, when we think of generally speaking, as I said, we have more than 600 contracts. Every client has a different vision on the business model. Some want to leverage on their own resources. Some prefer to have no risk and to have everything as a service. At the end, what we think is that the business model is quite open. It's up to the customer to decide which business model. We as a SUEZ are quite open to provide the service as the customer wants. An open technology, open business model. No locking, neither in technology nor in the business model. Okay, once we have gone along the road on the generic case, if we look at the Barcelona case study, how it came up. First, let's place Barcelona. It's in the Mediterranean, in the south of Europe. It's somewhere very quite dry, I would say. If you compare the rivers that supply water to Barcelona are quite small compared with other rivers in Europe. And we are subject to drought. I mean, when there's no rain, we have an alert threshold that every several years it gets triggered. Now in the last years we didn't, but the history tells us that at any time, any moment can come. And this is a dam in the north of Barcelona that we would like to have it full, but quite many times it happens that it gets empty. And then all the population gets a bit panicky. Looking at Aguas de Barcelona, the water company, it serves 23 municipalities, so Barcelona plus 22 municipalities around, 1.5 million meters serving almost 3 million people. As you can see, there's been a huge effort engaging the customer, which has had a big impact. Now we are consuming around a bit more than 100 liters per day per capita. There's been a lot of effort, as I said, in engaging the customer. So when we got at that point in 2015, when the directors of Barcelona said, what's next step? I think it was quite a consensus on next step would be smart metering. Not only providing messages, but more information on consumption to our customers. For that purpose, the smart metering control center room was created. And there's a small team, and this is a proof that what we are installing is simple, it's not complicated, and you don't need an army of engineers and technicians. It's managed by 2, 3, 4 people, depending on the days, depending on the activities. But it can be fairly automatized. So most of things are triggered by the systems itself, and basically the teams manage work order, closing, special incidents. So I would say we had fears that it might impact in more resources. As a matter of fact, at the end we see that with small resources and technology, we can cope with that. From a business point of view, out of the almost 1.5 million meters to cover, this month in October, we should be reaching the 500,000. And from this 500,000, from the last 3.5 years, what we've got, the main KPIs that we follow monthly, one is performance, radio performance. So we get 99% of daily performance, meaning that 99% of meters get 1 index per day. We already got rid or saved in more than 3 million manual bi-monthly reads that we don't do. For every meter, or for the group of meters that we are managing already, 0.23% of work orders that were related to non-information from manual readings that we don't have been saved. So we are reducing field operations that were before mandated. And from a pure data point of view, one surprise was that we have found 0.24% of frauds. I mean, people who play or fool with the meter, or people who activate the meter breaking the seal when the contract is closed. Another point is overconsumption alerts, I mean abnormal consumptions that before were not seen because we were having bi-monthly readings. Now we have daily readings and we can spot quite quick that something is not going as expected, and we can communicate it to the client. We have around 1.7% per month. So every month we have 1.7 of this kind of alarms. And if we talk about leakages, I mean, continuous consumption, what we could say suspect of leakage, because in some cases it's something voluntarily done, but in most of cases it's a leakage. We're talking 0.5% monthly. Every month, for every 1,000 meters we spot 5 leakages. And another KPI, which is quite interesting to follow, as I said, it's 23 municipalities. What we've seen, if we focus on the municipal facilities consumption, and we look only at the abnormal consumption, overconsumption in those specific contracts, I mean, we're talking about gyms, football stadiums, offices, public offices. What we've seen is that before looking at the bi-monthly bills, they had from 6, 7, 9% of overconsumptions, things that were not expected with high impact in the bill. With smart metering, just by having more information, these municipalities reduce the overconsumptions alert to 3%. So that's an example of the impact on a non-domestic customer with high consumption, just by providing information how they react much better. And then finally, these are two examples. These two examples were key for the board to decide to give a go. First example is a fraud. I mean, this comes from a pilot we made in 2013 before the full deployment was launched. It was a pilot in a zone of, we would say, well-off quarter. We would not expect frauds there. And then suddenly we started to find them. Things very strange. In this case, it's a house with almost half a cubic meter of consumption per day. And then suddenly, during 3 days, we had completely abnormal negative consumption. Total 67 cubic meters. I mean, if you look at, if you look at Google Maps, you will see that it has quite the size corresponding to 67 cubic meter swimming pool. So of course we went to the field, they inspected the meter and they found the seals broken. Something that before would not be noticed by the meter reader, the manual meter reader, now was checked by an inspector. And of course, after that, they send the letter to the customer saying, it was clear and checked what you did. So take care next time you do this kind of things, you can receive a penalty up to 3,000 euros just for that. And be assured that the 67 cubic meter, rather than being paid by us, it's going to be added to your bill. And the last case, that's a shop that was consuming 0.2 cubic meters per day, and suddenly they went up to 3. Of course, this behavior is quite easy to notice. It's flat, all meter readings per day, non-zero. So clearly that was a leakage. So we contacted the customer. The customer said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I know it's a toilet that it's not closing properly. When we made an estimation of the money he would be paying at the bill, he immediately called the plumber to fix it. And of course, after that, we saw he was coming back to his normal daily consumption. So at the end, with these evidences, that was important for the board, also with the regulator, to prove the case, to make sure that we help the citizens of the Barcelona metropolitan area, the importance of sharing the information with them, and to make sure that there's a value behind. I think that's pretty much. So thank you for your time. I think now it's time for questions, if any.
Thank you, Mateo. That was really, really interesting. So I'll let the people, we do have a few people here in the Sydney office who may have some questions to think about. So have a think about that. We do also have an opportunity for you to submit questions. And we've got a few questions coming in here, which we'll start to bring and get you to answer as well, Mateo. Looks like Jonathan, though. We might hand over to Jonathan and get Jonathan to ask the first question.
Thanks, Kirsty. Mateo, thank you for a very interesting discussion. Can you give us a bit more of detail about how you got the community engaged before the commencement of the project in Barcelona, or was that really only uptaken when the project started, about the use of the smart meters?
Well, let's say that first there was a communication, general communication, as the project got launched. Then, as we have 23 municipalities, next step we did was to engage every mayor and the whole board of the municipality. Our feeling was that they all were very satisfied. They all said, we want to be the first impacted with that. We want to be helping and showing. They help us also in communicating to the customer. And as we are deploying per zone, I mean, rather than deploying everywhere at the same time, we make it by geographical zones. In every zone, there was a specific communication plan and engagement plan that was agreed with every municipality. In some cases, the municipality took the lead, saying this is part of the smart city and pushing technology to our citizens. In some others, the lead was taken by, I was the Barcelona, by the water company, which with the bill, they were sending more information saying, what's important is that to get the most benefit of smart metering, you need to register in the customer portal. That will allow you to set plenty of alerts at your custom levels, and also to get immediate access. Right now, they have 26% of registered, and we expect this to go up as much as the customers start to understand the value of the automatic interaction through the portal.
Thank you very much. So we've got a few questions coming in here. I think we might start with a question from Paul around the challenges, access to meters, the fact that water supplies have their own loggers on water meters, and what network to implement.
Okay, regarding access to mirrors, it's quite important to notice Barcelona decided to keep the same team of operators, of field operators. So basically they have a team inside in their payroll and an outsourced team also, which know specific technical skills regarding technology. And what's important, that they kept the same team. This forced us to make sure that the change on them was almost zero, almost negligible. So basically what they are doing, they are the experts in accessing the meters, mostly when we're talking about meters inside the customer premises where you need access and you need to contact them prior. They knew how to do it, so they do the same as they did before, just that there's a transmitter on top of the meter. So it was quite a workaround that has been successful. Next question, there were more questions?
If we just go to this one here, from an anonymous attendee, what data are your meters sending? Is it just a register read or does it include interval data?
Okay, so far we have several frames. I mean, you can have the index per day. If you are very, very focused on the 20 years lifespan, we have hourly data, hourly consumption data. That's 24 readings. And we also have 50 minutes readings that allow you to have a big granularity in some cases. And for example, the CNI customers. On top of that, we have every day what we call a monitoring frame, which the maximum flow rate, minimum flow rate, and some other data like backflow, number of backflows, times of the word direction changed, and the accumulated backflow index. That's only in a daily basis frame.
Fantastic. We'll go to another question from an attendee online, Greg Mashire. How does the system perform in hilly areas and in fringe reception areas?
Well, as a matter of fact, hills are the biggest stopper of any radio solution. However, once we say that, I would say that VHF is proving the best coverage in terms of long range, even if there's hills. In Barcelona, there's plenty of hills. Fortunately, on most of water reservoirs, water tanks use those hills. So rather than being a problem, in fact it's a good helper. I would say as a conclusion, it's much better than other frequencies, and it's something that you must take care when you make the network design, but I would not say that's a problem.
Now we have a question from someone here in the AWA office.
Yep. Hi, Mateo. It's James from Becca. Just have a query. Will smart meters help, say, companies like SUEZ with upstream network management for, say, the Prospect water treatment plant? Will the information help the how you operate those plants at all? Just the data.
Well, I have not seen much usage of this data for a water treatment plant. What it's one of the uses that it's most important and most critically used is for network management. I mean, network managers are very, very interested in two types of consumption. First is big customers consumption, because these customers usually consume not only a lot, but whenever they want, 24 hours. So when you look at the night flow, which is what network managers look mostly to spot network leakages, they are interested in knowing if there's any big consumer consuming in that specific frame of time. And then another thing we do is the aggregated consumption of all meters in a DMA, in a given DMA, because that also provides an information that allows you to compare the water delivered to the DMA versus the water registered through the addition of all the meters. And it is something that usually this addition is made early in the morning with the data from last day. So all the information is populated quite early, and if there's any emergency, you can send or plan any crew to work on that.
We'll go back to a question from somebody online. This is from David Buck. Can it be assured that there are no health risks from the transmission of data, both human and environmental?
Well, that's a topic that comes every now and then. We have all the certificates from all to cover all aspects that the regulation in telecoms say. On top of that, what we do is a bit of public communication. So when some customer says, I don't want a radio transmitter so close to my home, first answer is, don't worry, the transmitter you have in your house or around your house, it's compliant with all the regulations, so all experts have checked that. But consider a bit of information. One transmitter, it's transmitting 2-3 seconds per day maximum. And if you count all the time, all the frames possible in one day, it will not be over 2 seconds per day. And transmission power is around 100 milliwatts, which is pretty small. I mean, when you consider that you have a phone when you're talking to your family close to your head and quite a long time, with the power it's transmitting, you should understand that having a transmitter 10 meters far from you, transmitting 2-3 seconds per day at 0.1 watt should be negligible. I mean, it's very hard to prove that it doesn't do any harm, but we think we are pretty far from other radio frequency transmitters.
I think we've got a couple of questions that are a little bit similar here around the cost benefit analysis, the cost recovery timeline. And so there's a specific question around a payback period for 25,000 people with potable water meters replaced with smart meters and SCADA. And that same thing, what's the cost benefit analysis and the cost recovery timeline for people looking at this system?
Well, I would say that every cost analysis, it's particular to every case. I'm not able to generalize, but I would say there are two main areas of benefit, and it depends on the side of the meter you're looking at. On the customer side of the meter, when you are engaging, you are helping consumers to reduce their consumption first by understanding their consumption so they can manage it. One of the important cases that we've been working is with the information we have, how close we would be able to tell a customer in what he's spending or which usages are most consuming. So we are trying to estimate Showers are a big consumption usage in the house. From the QMATs, from the maximum flow rate, you should be able, in most of cases, to get an average. And from that, we should be able to tell the customer that we think the shower head of your shower, it's too big. And with a little reduction of that, you would reduce the flow rate. That's an example. Leakage, straightforward. Overconsumption, straightforward. But I think from the customer side of the meter, it should be quite straightforward to understand the case. On the other side of the mirror, as I said, network managers are very interested in any data regarding performance or anything happening in the network. Frauds, hydrant usage, consumption in big customers, checking that every meter is correctly dimensioned for the consumption pattern. I mean, all these aspects will help reduce the non-revenue water from a technical point of view. So I think I cannot say what's the payback period for a specific case without analyzing it, but from these two parts of the equation, you should be able to check if it pays off, such an investment.
And I think something that actually then flows on from that is another question we have from Simon here about then customers and in Barcelona, are they able to visualize their water use online? And what's the percentage uptake of that feature? So are customers now able to see what the smart meter is telling everyone? Are they able to see that and adjust their usage accordingly?
Yeah. One part of the project is to invest in the IT, and in this solution, one of the key aspects that we have been developing and putting in place they had already a customer portal where the customer could see all the bills, could manage a change of an account or do several operations like create a demand or a consultation or a duplicata of the bill. Now, if they have a smart meter, they have a new button which says detailed consumption, and there they jump from seeing consumption in a bi-monthly base to seeing daily consumption and other data. And there, they also can set alarms. They can say, whenever consumption per day or per week or per month goes over this threshold and is defined by the customer, please send an alert to this email, which could be another email for the cases when you have an email for the contract manager and an email for the maintenance manager of that specific meter. And also for the leakage, you can do the same. And in the leakage, first we had a generic solution. Now we have a solution that allows the customer to say, don't send me an email, an alert for every day with a non-zero consumption per hour. Wait until 3 days, because my pattern is I have a big garden and I like to, or a swimming pool, and I don't want an alert every time I fill up the swimming pool or I garden. So a bit, little by little, we are customizing a bit the portal, but the web portal so far allows the customers who have a smart meter to gain access to all the information. Of course, for that, they need to register. And I think there was an ask. Okay. They overpassed 26%. That's the last KPI I have in mind. And it's growing up 0.5%, 1% per year. Of course, we're talking, it's around 10% of the total meter base that it's getting smart every year, around 10%. So the project is not affecting a big group of the customers, but we see that little by little people getting conscious that there's a lot of information they can look at.
Fantastic, thank you, Mateo. Did we have any more questions from here in the room? There was another question here. Sorry, Tomo, can I just get, yeah. So this is quite an important one for Australia in particular. Do you see value in utilising IoT in regional areas, given the lower consumption, or is it more suited to larger population centres?
Well, clearly in larger population centers, you have a bigger density that allows you to have a lower operating cost, a lower investment per meter. At the end, what to do with non-dense or rural or semi-rural areas, it's a difficult answer. I would say, let's consider the benefit you might get from the cost you have. We have made several projects, not in Barcelona, Barcelona is quite dense, for small populated zones like 20, 30 meters, which can be in several square kilometers. And it's something feasible. I mean, you can make quite a custom network specifically for that case, which is not very expensive to manage. And at least it allows you to cover most of customers. Of course, when you're talking about 2-3 meters, maybe the best solution in that case is to use a GSM solution if there's GSM coverage, because sometimes it all comes together. It doesn't make sense to install a WISE receiver, but there's non-GSM coverage neither.
And I think we have time for one more here. So is there a WISE case study here in Australia yet? And we might go to Sean for that one to answer this question.
Thank you. So the question was, are there any WISE case studies in Australia? And I think there is another question about using the 169 megahertz frequency in Australia. I think those are related to each other. One of the reasons that we're talking about this now is SUEZ has been sponsoring the WISE Alliance to do the regulatory and compliance work with ACMA in Australia to be able to use 169 megahertz in this way. That's all done. And the one case study that we're allowed to talk about publicly is in Melbourne, which will be commissioned in November, if I'm getting that correct. That's, of course, not the only project that we're working on in the country or in the region. That's just the only one that we can announce and talk about. But yes, it's absolutely, we have projects here. We're going to have more projects coming along, and the frequency is absolutely available. There's a process, happy to talk about it. Let me know. Thank you.
Well, I think then I might just, Mateu, if you've got any final comments based on your presentation that you'd like to make, or Sean, anything before we wrap up for the day? No? Well, it was a really fantastic presentation. So again, we'd really like to thank Mateu. We're very lucky to have you here in Australia and to have this opportunity to speak to us, to Sean and Erin from SUEZ, and for SUEZ's ongoing support of the Australian Water Association. So we'll wrap it up there and thank everybody for joining us here this afternoon. Thank you.